Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 7 of Conversations in the Future of Work. I am your host, Rachel Cossar, co-founder and CEO at Virtual Sapiens, AI role-playing coaching, and leader of this podcast, Conversations in the Future of Work, thinking about how our crazy world is evolving from multiple different perspectives and angles. This is the first episode of this season, and I couldn't be more thrilled to welcome good friend David Morelli from Owl Hub. So welcome, David.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here with you, Rachel, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely. So if you want to just share a little bit about your background, what you're up to now.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in executive coaching and leadership development for almost 30 years. And I did my PhD in studying some of the world's best coaches to find out like what they actually say and do inside of their conversations. And then I realized that what I discovered there, which we're going to be talking about today, the respect styles, what I discovered is that those styles are not only used by coaches, they're also used by leaders. And so I'm excited to share, some insights, hopefully, that will be supportive of people who are listening. So.
Awesome. So we're going to dive right in. You created respect coaching, and I'm going to ask you to go through respect for everyone, just so we really know what we're dealing with, based on your doctoral research, as you said. So if you don't mind just going over, again, high level, what that acronym means and stands for, and then what unique insights, you mentioned it also applies to leadership in addition to coaching. What unique leadership insights did this uncover?
Yeah. So what I was on the hunt for are there, we know about leadership styles, right? Authentic leadership, servant leadership, etc. But there was nothing in coaching literature called styles. So I was like, well, do coaches use styles? And if so, what are they? And so I was searching for this combination of sort of the language that they're using and why they're using that language and seeing, are there patterns here? And so I found that there are 7 distinct styles that these coaches use, and they weave in and out of all of them. And so sometimes the respect is an acronym. The R stands for the rallier, which is kind of that goal orientation. You're trying to get people to take action. The E, the first E is the educator. So you're helping them fill in knowledge and skill gaps. The S is for strategist to help them solve complex problems. The P for provocateur is about challenging their thinking, getting them to be sort of that critical thinking level. E for explorer is about creativity, innovation, curiosity, and helping them make new discoveries. C for confidant is all about being there sort of in that human to human way where you're creating a safe space for them. And then transformer is about helping them become a better version of themselves through a process of change. So respect is rallier, educator, strategist, provocateur, explorer, confidant, and transformer.
So I remember we did like a mini coaching session where it was so short, but it was very poignant because you actually went through each of these coaching styles via different types of questions. And it was interesting because I think I'd mentioned to you, and I'm sure so many people listening to this have experienced someone who goes more into like the provocateur or the challenger, right? And they kind of stick to that, and that's their main style. And of course, that can be very impactful. But what was so wonderful about this coaching experience that you gave me following this method was that it felt very balanced and well-rounded. Can you share more? Because I found it very interesting. There's a way that you also kind of break down the percentage of time kind of spent based on each, and like how that kind of evolves and impacts things as well.
Yeah. And like you alluded to, a lot of people have defaults, right? Sometimes people are just the provocateur. They're always the one poking holes, or sometimes they're just the strategist where I'm going to try and fix everything that's in front of me. It doesn't matter whether it needs to be fixed or not, right? I'm going to try and fix it or whatnot. And so people centralize around 2 to 3 generally. But we need all 7. To your point, it's a well-rounded conversation. So in that interaction, by the way, stepping back, literally everything we say and do, there's a style or set of styles behind it, right? So if I ask you like, hey, what's a goal that you have for this episode, right? That would be a rallier type of question, right? But if I said, hey, what problem are you hoping this solves for the listeners? That would end up being more of a strategist? Or, hey, what do you know about coaching already that applies to that would be the educator, where you're kind of eliciting knowledge. Provocateur, what assumptions are people maybe making that aren't valid for how they're thinking about coaching today, right? That would be the
Mhm.
provocateur,
Yeah.
right? And so each one, the explorer being, hey, what matters here? The confidant, hey, how are you feeling about this? Or the transformer is things like, well, are you hoping that people become by listening to this episode, right? And hopefully becoming a better version of themselves, more capable, more powerful, etc. So every single, and those were explorer, confidant, transformer. So
Yeah.
every single thing that we say, whether it's a statement or a question, has a style already embedded in it.
Yeah.
And yet, to your point, most people have tendencies where they
Mhm.
centralize around a few. And this is true of leaders, right? We have data around that. We have data around what coaches usually do, which is actually different than leaders. But they're high in a couple, and then they're low in usually 2 to 3 as well. And that
Right.
creates the overuse and underuse actually creates problems for people.
Right. Right. And so we are going to get into that a little bit in a second. I'd like to know also how organizations are applying this respect coaching style.
Yeah. So people are doing it in lots of different ways. So I have an example. One is the Allstate. It's become the official model of Allstate. And so which is cool. Yeah. So they're bringing it into their leadership programs and coaching programs and other things like that. It's coming into Capital One. Capital One is bringing it into their internal coaching cadre of people, and then we'll sort of extend from there probably into leadership programs. But they're starting it first with their own internal coaches, which is great. So that's one way. But another organization, they said, you know what? We want to create a coaching culture. And to do it, we're going to give this assessment and this, hour training, by the way, by people who are trained by us to go in and train at their company, right? So it's an HR person and somebody who is internal coach. They took it, they gave it to everybody, and their job satisfaction jumped 180% in only
Mm.
3 months.
Right.
And it stuck for 2 years later. It's now 2 years later, and it's been a permanent culture change, right? So there's
Mm.
lots of different applications of this inside of organizations.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's really fascinating about this is that underlying these different styles is empowering people who, to your point, like may not be coaches. They could be, right, an HR leader, manager, people manager, engineer, like with a whole array or framework towards asking really great questions.
Yeah.
And not getting stuck in asking maybe like the same safe question that you're like you're wired, or you have your kind of muscle memory around asking. And I think when people are asking the right and appropriate types of questions for the goals of the conversation, that's when I'm not surprised to hear that employee satisfaction jumped so much, because we all know what it's like to be in conversation with someone who asks really great questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the big aha that I had, because honestly, initially I thought hey, this is just for leaders. But that organization that I mentioned, they said, we're going to imagine a world where anybody could turn to anybody else and give them coaching. And so you imagine a frontline person
Right.
saying, hey, I just ran into this issue. And instead of them saying, oh, bummer, go talk to the boss about it, they're like, hey, well, where are you getting stuck? And there was this conversation that got them unstuck without it ever having to rise to the level of going to the boss or the manager. And I, imagine if people are listening and they're managers themselves, you are probably like, holy cow, like I just got to remove half the things that
Yeah.
I normally have to deal with that are problems that come to me, and people are independent and thinking about it themselves. And it's not that you can't rubber stamp an idea, but there are certain things that they shouldn't even come to you in the first place. Right?
Mhm.
Like being a higher order organization, you have to have more time freed up
Yeah.
to think at that next level. Well, this is one way to do that and to do it well.
Right. So switching a little bit over to the leaders, who are gathering insights based on these assessments, what kinds of patterns are you seeing with leaders who are taking this
Yeah,
assessment?
most leaders, you can kind of see in their one-on-ones a pattern
Mm,
of people come in, you're like, hey, how was your weekend or whatever. Sometimes they have that sort of relationship building, if you will, a couple minutes at the start. And then they go into, okay, great, let's jump into your projects. How far along are you? And they start going to the rallier. So the first thing, by the way, was confidant. So they start off with
mhm,
confidant, relationship building, etc.
mhm,
Then they go into this, where are you with your projects? How is the progress coming? You almost do like a status update, right? Which is rallier. And then they go into, okay, well, what we're doing is we're searching for problems. So, and then they go into strategist. Okay, well, let's talk through. And the big mistake that managers make often is they solve problems for the
Yes.
direct report
Yeah.
rather than to help them work it through themselves. So that's the power move within strategists. Every style has a power move, and usually it's the opposite of what most of us do.
Right. Mhm,
But the power move is to help talk through or partner with them on that strategy or that solution. And then they end up going back like, okay, great, well, tell me, like, let's design some actions. What are you gonna? So they end up in rallier, strategist, and confidant.
mm,
But what they're missing are helping them build skills that they're going to need to become more capable. That's being the educator. Or
mhm,
sometimes they avoid the difficult conversations, which is the provocateur. Right?
mm,
Uh, yeah, we've all been there, right? Or seen that. Explorer, sometimes we don't actually ask people, well, what do you think? Or how did you get
yeah,
to this spot? Not from a diagnosis standpoint,
yeah,
but more from an exploratory, help me understand your viewpoint.
yeah.
And then so few people get the transformer or the career development conversations about like, hey, who do you want to become and how, like, what are you struggling with inside of yourself and how can I help you move through fear of failure or imposter syndrome or the other things that are connected to sometimes the internal changes we need to make to
Mm,
fulfill our potential. So
right.
that tends to be the pattern that I see with most leaders.
Right. And the other interesting thing that we touched on was that there other coaching models, or even leadership frameworks touch on maybe 3 out of the 7
Yep.
styles, right? Like we were talking about grow coaching method, which and so it's interesting that, and I guess it makes sense that a lot of leaders or managers and coaches would have these patterned behaviors that are leaving out some of those other critical styles, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's a funny thing. Do you mind if I just pop in a funny? Yeah.
Please.
So there's this funny thing that I realized along the way as I was doing this is how managers learned how to coach. It's, by the way, it's the number one skill you can have is being a good coach as a manager. This is after a 10-year study at Google. They discovered, hey, if you're a good coach, you're great at managing. Um, and what's pretty funny is, so it's the number one skill. But if you think about where did we learn how to coach? Well, most people have only gotten maybe 1% of the training that they've gotten in their actual discipline or less, like 1% or less.
Hmm.
And where did you learn how to coach? Well, you learned how to coach by people. I call it like a bad game of telephone. You
Yeah.
learned from other people who have never learned how to coach.
Yeah.
And so the game of telephone starts with a clear message and then we watch it sort of devolve as people pass it along. But coaching never started off with, or managers learning how to coach never started off with a clear message as to what is good coaching and how to do it. And so
Right.
that's what respect gives is, hey, here's what good coaching looks like from studying 16 of the world's best coaches
Mhm,
to find out what they're doing and how they're doing it. Right.
mhm.
So, but imagine if we did invest in the number one predictor of success as managers and we turned leaders into great coaches, what would be possible, not only for organizations, but for more broadly their lives, for society, right? Like it's pretty big implications.
Absolutely. And building on that, right? So what is one strategic move organizations can make now to build that coaching culture, which is, to your point, could be like game changing in many ways, but also given the world we're living in now, like helps you endure some of this disruption and chaos?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think question asking is an valued skill. And
Absolutely.
there's a distinction that a lot of people make. And so in the back of our minds, we kind of know this, but we don't necessarily practice it, is open versus closed questions. Closed-ended questions being like sometimes leading, like, wouldn't it be a good idea to ... or do you think it's this, right? And so you're sort of like asking this closed-ended thing that where you're tend to be driving the yes or no. I like to say that closed-ended questions get you one of three answers:
Mm-hmm.
yes, no, and then usually people guess that it's going to be maybe or I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. In my experience, it's usually yes, no, or lied to.
Mm.
That
Right.
people don't give you the answer that's authentic to them. They give you the answer that they think you want to hear.
Right.
But an open-ended question starts off with who, what, when, where, why, or how. Like, hey, where would be the best place for you to focus this week? Or, hey, around this disruption, what do you think are some ideas that you have that could help us with this? Or how do you think we can endure this disruptive change together? Right. So I think that's one fundamental part of it. But each of those things is going to have a style behind it, right? And so that's that sort of tricky part is you'll still be at the behest of your style preferences usually, unless you learn to broaden them. And
Mm-hmm.
so all styles ultimately are relevant to change and enduring disruption.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I also think, well, I guess another question I have in developing this culture of coaching, what happens when someone unwittingly and not certainly not intentionally, but like lands on something that they're really like that actually doesn't fall within a coaching framework to solve, like that actually falls more within like therapy or
Mhm.
something like that, like what happens then?
Yeah, and that does sometimes happen. I mean, it happens already, right? Like, let's be honest, like it's already there.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my God. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's where I like to pull on the educator a little bit and to say, hey, here's what coaching is really good at, and here's what therapy really
Yeah. Yeah.
addresses. I was quoted in the New York Times magazine in an article around coaching and therapy,
Yeah.
and so I like to say that coaching is present moment looking forwards, typically.
Yeah.
Therapy is usually, hey, there's something of your past that's coming back and it's sort of haunting you.
Yeah.
It's sort of present moment looking backwards.
Mm,
Now that's oversimplified, but
yeah.
relatively speaking, if it has to do with healing or trauma or things like that,
Yeah.
that's not. It's not that styles don't exist with therapists,
Yeah.
because they do. The style
Yeah.
patterns are still there, but it's not really the domain
Yeah.
of what coaching has prepared you for.
Yeah.
And so, compassion, i.e., confidant, you can have compassion without necessarily delving into it. So that's that, like, you don't have to say, whoa, I can no longer talk to you, right? It's more like, wow, that sounds really challenging. And then
Hmm.
you can bring in the educator. That here's what I feel comfortable addressing. And
Yeah.
so let's talk about, maybe where could you go to help you get what you need.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. I just feel like that's going to happen more and more, especially with the younger generation that has really taken on some big terms pretty casually. I think,
mm,
like you hear
mhm.
either self diagnoses around like OCD and ADHD, or like, my trauma is like almost a meme
Yeah,
now. And
yeah,
so I feel like that's going to come up more and more. And certainly, yeah, anyways, it's just kind of a messy space. So it's helpful, I think,
yeah,
to think of it in that present forward versus present past. So you're not really getting over or ahead of your skis, so to speak.
yeah. And I find, again, the one of the best things you can do is just like we've all until now, everybody's been walking around with all that stuff anyways.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of just like creating space and compassion for it without being the place where they process it uh,
Right.
fully, right? Like
Totally.
as a job.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Totally. So speaking of thinking ahead and looking forward, what are you most excited about over the next 5 years?
Me personally, I'm going to be writing the Respect Styles book. And I think that's going to be a good way for it to sort of proliferate in the world. But we've already trained 60 plus coaches, or sorry, not coaches, but trainers in the Respect Styles. And so I think it's going to gain a lot of traction and momentum. In the last 2.5 years, we're already in one of the top 3 of the Fortune 500 lists. We have another very large healthcare company that pretty much everybody knows, those other organizations. So in the next 5 years, I'm sort of excited to see where this ends up going, because people keep resonating with it, which is kind of cool and weird in a certain way. It was like, oh, well, I thought I was just sort of doing this nerdy study, but it turns out it's actually kind of maybe helpful. So
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. It's, I feel like your position as certainly a researcher and now a founder, it's really special to see something that you obviously very much believe in, but then have spent a lot of time honing and developing to see it resonating and coming to life with people. That's really amazing.
Yeah. And I think that ahead in the next 5 years is also what we do with technology and AI and all of that.
Yeah.
I know you're with Virtual Sapiens making huge strides in that category. And I think we're going to be looking at like, how does this lay into or frame up with platforms like yours and others in the world? Like, AI and technology is going to create a lot of disruption, and there's going to be a lot of need for helping people figure out, how do I relate to this change? And so, and there's also a lot more divisiveness in the world than there was. And so having good conversations that bring people together is also another thing that I'm really excited about helping to support.
Absolutely. David, thank you so much for coming on the show, being the season opener, and sharing all your insights. Anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I am really grateful to you and the great work that you're doing, how you're helping to empower people. I think I really feel very fortunate to have started a good relationship with you. And then for those listening, I would say, think about the difference that you want to make in other people's lives, the impact that you want to have, and hopefully you can apply not only this show but all the rest that Rachel and team produces to help you along the way.
Awesome. And how can people be in touch with you or follow your work?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I have it's David Morelli. I think there's a PhD somewhere in there. So that's an easy way to do it. Owlhub.com, OWLHUB. I like to say where wise leaders gather. And then probably another spot to come and check out is, we have a podcast as well. It's called Owlcast, the Leadership and Coaching Podcast. So if you have a little extra room for another one, including this one, feel free to come check us out. If you only have to pick one, choose this one.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in as always, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.